Hi everyone, this is Abel. Welcome back to my channel. Today I have a question for you. Are bookish fandoms making reading better, or are they making it worse actually? Let's talk about it. So a couple of days ago I was texting with a friend of mine. He's an author too. We were talking about life and writing and hobbies and all of the good stuff. You know, the kind of casual texting that you have with a friend that doesn't live in the same place where you live, someone you can be in contact and stay in contact just because of the interwebs and social media. And I don't remember specifically how we ended up touching on this topic, but he mentioned Harry Potter. And I casually said, I haven't read those books. I'm not actually that much interested in those books. And I could feel, even just by texting, the cold that that statement created between us. It actually took a couple of seconds to reply. And he asked me, how and why? Why didn't you read? Haven't you read those books? How is this possible that you feel not connected to any of the families and households of that books? Haven't you watched the movies? And I said, no, actually, I haven't. I was old when those book and movies became popular. I was never a part of that fandom. I was late. And to be honest, I never felt attracted to that kind of books. So yeah, so no. And he was disappointed. He said, I am disappointed. I'm feeling bad for you. And that sentence, coupled with a couple of other things that happened, made me realize that I wanted to discuss about this topic, about fandoms and how they can influence, if they in any way influence our experience in general. This video will be split in chapters, so feel free to jump around and focus just on the micro topics that we're discussing in this macro discussion, okay? Now, full confession again. I'm chronically late to all kind of bookish fandoms. I was already too late, and I felt really old when Percy Jackson was a thing. Not that it is not anymore a thing, but I remember 10 years ago it was much more influential than it is today. And the same goes for Harry Potter. And that's not to say that you cannot enjoy middle grade books if you're older, of course. It's just that my interests were directed to other kind of books. My interest for fandoms and discussions about books, they were directed to hard sci-fi and epic fantasy, of course. And same goes, for example, for Red Rising by Pierce Brown. It was already kind of a world, a little empire with legions and legions of warrior fans. And it felt difficult to enter that fandom. I was in time, even if there were already out, I think, 2 or 3 books with the Sun Eater series fandom, and for quite a while, at least a couple of years, I was fiercely loyal to that fandom. So yeah, I usually am late, especially for Brandon Sanderson. When I discovered that I had to read, and that I actually wanted to read tons and tons of books and novellas and short stories to understand what was going on and to understand the memes, I was already late, and it was honestly intimidating. But that desire was already there, and it was still there. It was very powerful. I wanted to be part of a couple of specific fandoms, and today I am an active part of a couple of specific fandoms, with a little bit of a caveat, a couple of caveats that we'll maybe discuss a little bit better later, okay? So, yes, I'm late, and this puts me in a specific position because I can watch those fandoms from the outside and decide if I want to be part of them because they're already mature. And of course, you lose something, a little bit of the blossoming and the growing up of those fandoms if you come late, Because if you're part of the early readership of a book, you can actually experience the growing and following the author in his authorial journey, becoming a better and better author, hopefully. But you can also be oblivious to a couple of things that can happen in those fandoms and make them, that actually made them difficult to enter, to be part with, because there is something called gatekeeping in fandoms too, especially bookish fandoms too. And I think that is good material for another discussion that maybe we'll dwell a little bit more later. For now, I have other things that I want to discuss a little bit better with you in this specific video. And also, being a differently young guy, I struggle to connect with. I am really curious to see and try to understand what makes romantasy such a juggernaut as a subgenre today. It looks like everything from science fiction to fantasy, it is turning toward romance in a very powerful way. Those books sell a lot of copies. And I tried and I failed and I found maybe one series that it's kind of a guilty pleasure. I think it is enjoyable with some reserve on my part, but generally men like me, we struggle to feel connected to romantasy. And that's not to say that I'm not trying. I am actively trying to know and understand better that genre. I still haven't found my favorite book series. Maybe one day, and if you have suggestions for them, let me know. We'll have a better and deeper discussion about romantasy, I promise you. Not today, though. So, where is it the appeal, and why do we end up gravitating around fandoms, specifically bookish fandoms? I think there's some kind of a magic around them. The kind of discussion and connection that you can do in fandoms, I think it's pretty unique because, let's be honest, reading is a solitary activity. We read alone and we actively search for the time and place to make that reading experience perfect. We organize our space, if we can, around us. We search for quiet places. We search for the perfect chair. We have a cold brew around, or a hot cup of tea. We try to create the right atmosphere that revolves around us, our reading experience. And the same goes for audiobooks. They can be used in a more dynamic ways while you do sports, while you do chores, while driving, and all the rest. But it is usually a pretty lonely experience. And that is in a stark contrast with what happens when we stop reading. Because if the book is competently written, and if this experience is compelling, we will feel the need to discuss it with others. And by being readers and spending so much time, our free time, by reading, that makes our life a little bit different from all the others people that have different hobbies. For gamers, they may spend a lot of time online doing battle royales or other kind of competitive experience with a lot of friends, sharing their experience by gaming. But for readers, we spend a lot of time by ourselves, and we enjoy being loners and spending so much time with such interesting characters and world and concept. We want that, but we want to be free to choose and select a specific time when we want to share that. And that's why many people start booktube channels like this one, or have accounts on Instagram or TikTok, or someone still on Facebook, or that kind of social media, because we want to be free to select a specific time and hour of the day to share our experience and maybe learn and understand from others, and to have a confrontation, to have a discussion about that specific plot point, about that specific character, about how crazy that was, and maybe having theories about imagining how the world and the story of that series will change, what will happen, and carefully avoiding spoilers, and watching pinboards, and watching theories, and having and staying away from reviews because we don't want to be spoiled. So yeah, we want to be loners, we enjoy to be loners, we enjoy the inherent solitude of reading, but at the same time we crave the experience of sharing those books. Thing is that by being loner and by being readers, most of the time we really don't have many friends who read in general, or that read the same kind of books that we enjoy. So it is weird. We are in a weird position, and fandoms give us what we want most of the time, the way we want, in the safety of our house, just by connecting with people on social media. And this side of the things, the way fandoms give us an outlet to discuss books, is 100% positive. It cannot be otherwise, because we need that, and fandoms give us a community. But of course, there's always a but. There's always something, a darker side, and the dark side of the bookish moon. And I think that the problem is the echo chamber situation, because especially when a fandom is strongly established and it's been going on for many years, the experience of reading and sharing can turn into some kind of a performative experience, like sharing how much knowledge you have about the lore and the background of the characters, the details and inner workings and theories and additional materials, and how well researched and how well read you are about a series. It looks like you have to show off and you have to correct everyone. I don't know if you have ever watched The Office. There's a specific character called Oscar that everybody mocks because he's the one that very often says, well, actually, who's the one correcting people and to try and make them understand that they're wrong. And he has this kind of patronizing attitudes when he's treating you well, because like, poor thing, you cannot know, and I'm going to explain you. Keep in mind, that's an incredible character. He's so nuanced. He is a very likable character. But when he does that, he's really annoying. And there are a ton of people in a fandom that, being part of the early adopters, early readership of that series, can feel entitled to be mean, basically. Showing off, curating picture, sharing essays, and being very confrontational about discussion that you have in a Facebook group, on a TikTok, with TikTok videos and discussion with those videos, with Twitter threads or discussion on threads. Yes, it can be annoying, and it may lead very easily to gatekeeping. And you know what gatekeeping is? It is when members of a community try to shield that community and make it difficult for newcomers to feel welcome, and because they have ideas about what kind of people can enjoy their kind of literature or fandoms or series that they themselves enjoy. And if you have a different opinion and if you have a different background, they will feel like they have to protect that fandom. They will treat you poorly and try to push you out. Okay, so yeah, in that kind of situation, when a fandom is very much well established, and when there are persons who have a long experience that have been building a very intimate relationship with those books because they love them so much, it can be difficult to interact in a free way because everything you say will be heavily scrutinized. And more often than not, even if your discussion are always in good faith, and if you have to criticize something that you don't like about that specific book or series of book, and if you try to ask to others about their opinions without being vitriolic, just because you have doubts and just because there's something, maybe a minutia about that story that you don't like, or that you don't enjoy, or that you feel kind of icky or doubtful about it, if you try and do that, you will be overwhelmed with the negative feedbacks, because critiques about specific books or authors that are very well beloved, they feel like you're attacking the authors, the books, and the fandom around it. Something like that happened to me a couple of years ago on a Facebook when I was talking about how difficult it was for me to enjoy The Way of Kings by Brandon Sanderson. I was very much attracted to that fandom because of the overwhelming amount of jokes and memes and fan arts about Kaladin, about Shallan, about Dalinar and Odalin, and about Hoyd, called Wit, and all the rest. I really, really, really wanted to understand them, and I wanted to enjoy the story because I love epic fantasy stories. But it was really, really hard for me to connect with The Way of Kings. I didn't enjoy the pacing, I didn't enjoy the characters. I am a character-focused reader. If I struggled to connect with the characters, it was a no-brainer for me. But at the same time, I recognized how important that story was, and I wanted to understand why it was so important for so many people. And at the same time, by being a writer myself, I told myself, and sorry for this awful wordplay, you have to give it another try. Give it another try. There's always something to learn there. There must be something special about the books, about that series, and you have to give it another try. So I ended up giving that book 4 try. And the 4th one was the good one when I actually finished the book. I described this experience, and me by me in that Facebook post, I also said, I bought 3 expensive hardcover books that I don't know if I'm going to finish. It's a lesson for me. I bought the US hardcover edition of The Way of Kings, of The Word of Radiance, and Oathbringer before finishing the read book 1, while I was struggling to the first book. That's just because I am so maniacal about collecting books. And I was documenting this experience, and the amount of people shaming me because I was not able to understand the books and to have the audacity to go on a fandom book criticizing the book because it was not my thing, and being absolutely dumb because who told you to buy those expensive hardcovers? Are you dumb? Yeah. It was not a nice experience. And I ended up reading those in the first book and enjoying it, not loving it. I enjoyed much more the second, and I still didn't have the guts to read the third book because it's a huge time commitment for me. Because as much as I appreciate the story and appreciate the characters, it's not something that I devour because I enjoy it so much. But the fandom, they really pushed me away. And that's not to say that all the people that are part of that huge fandom are that way. Of course not. The vast majority of the people that are part of that fandom are really welcoming, they're well read, they're very funny, they're really smart, but that experience was really bad for me. And it took me years to come around and trying again and finding a new group of people that were understanding for me, understanding of my struggles reading that series, and that didn't judge me because I was having a hard time connecting with the first book. And this long foray is to tell you that yes, gatekeeping exists. Yes, fandom can be really hard to approach, and being part of them can be difficult. Sometimes it can be exhausting. And that's why I wanted to have this discussion for you, to see if it is worth to try to be part of a community when you feel that you're enjoying the book but you're not loving them. Is there some kind of a requirement for you to be part of a fandom? Do you have to go through some kind of trial by fire, reading a certain amount of books, doing a certain quantity of comments? Do you have to force yourself to be the kind of people that the vast majority of that fandom wants you to be? Do you have to have the same opinion like them? Are you allowed to be critical? Are you allowed to have a more nuanced stance about this? Are you allowed to love something, do not love something, criticize something, and absolutely adore something else? I don't know if I have answer to all of that question, but I have more questions for sure. Because in a way, fandoms, they have their own personalities. Like they're the sum of the many personalities of the vast majority of the people making it. Think about it. Most of the people who are really, really dead set fans of Brandon Sanderson and all of the Stormlight Archives and Mistborn and all the rest, they're very analytic in the way they manage their knowledge about the story. They know the details, the intricacies, the timelines. They do theories. They love spreadsheets. They love bullet points. On the other side, members of the Harry Potter community, they have this love for nostalgia, for that alternative past that is shown in that series, because it captures and it created at the same time a very special zeitgeist when it was at its peak. Not that it doesn't have any peak today, it is very much relevant, and sometimes for the wrong reasons too. But they love to be part of a household. Those households have specific personality traits too. They love to analyze the differences between the books and the movies, and they love to protect the integrity of the story, and they love at the same time creating incredible fan fiction of those. We have Alchemist, who came out a couple of days ago, who's taken the world by storm, and that was a Dramion story. So, and at the same time, readers of the vast majority of the lovers of Sarah J. Maas, for example, they're very much driven by emotion, by the emotional resonance of those stories, a little bit by mental health too, and the passion for the characters and for the love interests. And they see themselves in those female main characters that are so strong, and their character development and the way they experience that world and the aesthetics of that world. And that's not to say that that once you are part of a fandom, you're locked there, inside there, and you cannot exit it anymore or enjoy something else. I know many girls and women who adore Sarah J. Maas, and at the same time they love epic fantasy and they read Malazan too. Okay, that is a difficult fandom too. Yeah, Malazan, what a fascinating world. That's for another discussion. And I also think that age plays a huge factor in deciding to be part of a fandom or not. Even if you enjoy a story, uh, you can decide to do a step more to interact with people and be more involved in the fandom, or decided to do not do that, depending of how much that story can actually affect you and influence you. I think that when you're younger, it is way easier to be drawn in. You know, for the Percy Jackson fandom, for example, dreaming to be a demigod and connected to a specific god because you enjoy their personalities and you enjoy the lore and the story, and that's depending maybe on how much you know about the original mythos behind those gods. And the same goes for Harry Potter, being part of one of the households. Or when you read Red Rising, especially the first trilogy, especially the first book, which is a little bit more oriented to a younger audience. And I know that that series goes growing, becoming darker and deeper as the story goes. So yeah, I think that when you're younger, if you're in middle school or then become a teenager, you search for that kind of connection. Because as I told you, being a reader and being a loner is one thing, needing connection is another thing, and they intertwine in different ways, I think, depending on how old you are. Because when you're younger, you kind of need that kind of connection because you need that to grow up in a healthy way. If you spend too much time alone, even if you're an introvert by yourself and it is natural for you staying alone and being with others, it consumes your energy. If you spend too much time alone, you will grow up caged in a way that actually injure your ability to live in a proper way, to function in a acceptable way for yourself, to try and have a satisfying life. As an adult, that's different, because if you're a loner and if you're an introverted as an adult, you have much more power to decide how much time you're going to spend alone, because most of the time you're forced to spend time with people that you don't like, at your job, with family members too. So when you want to spend your me time, your you time, together with yourself and your books, it can end up being overwhelming because you enjoy that time so much that you lose contact with time, you lose contact a little bit with reality. And that's when the relationship with fandoms becomes difficult, because the things that you search, the experience that you get out from a book can be deeply different from what others have. And it can be frustrating to have the feelings that people don't understand you, don't understand your take. Now, granted, we as adults have a responsibility that when we share our thoughts and our takes and our analysis about a book, a character, of the lore of that story, that has to be comprehensible. We are not excused of trying to be understandable by the others and try to explain them in the best way we can. That doesn't mean that people will misunderstand what we say, that people will try to pick a fight with us just because they're tired, or that because their car broke, or because they're sick in their stomach, because they're a little bit depressed and they want to have a fight, and they will give you a nasty comments on the very curated video that you did about that obscure character in that huge series of 20 books, or that they will slam you on that beautiful picture of that series that you did, or on any kind of fan edits, or maybe artworks if you're an artistic person, and do your personal rendition of how a character look. You will have toxic interaction, no matter how much you cared for that content, how much you tried to assure yourself to make it as readable and understandable and as nuanced as possible. But there will be people that will misunderstand that. That doesn't mean that you have to be sloppy in the way you try to communicate that. So yes, I think that age and maybe mood to affect deeply how much we can actually be part of a fandom, and how much we can be a positive force inside the community. As adults, we start to search for different things. We want a deeper connection with the characters, with the themes, with the story. We analyzed and we experienced the same product in a very different way. I remember that one of my favorite stories, epic fantasy stories, was Magician by Raymond E. Feist. When I was a teenager, I loved it to death. It was one of the very first chunkers that I was able to finish from beginning to end with no stops. I consumed it in less of a couple of days, and if you have read the book, you know how difficult it is because it's a huge book. But by rereading that as an adult, I still appreciate the story, but I see it on a very different, with very different lenses. I don't have any more rose-tinted glasses because I still think it's a very good book, but it didn't age that well in many aspects, and I think that that happens with fandoms too. The more we grow, the more we change what we actually really want from books. And maybe the thing is that we don't have to necessarily grow up out fandoms, you know, because they're middle grade books or because they're YA books. Does anybody remembers the YA craze of 10 years ago? It looks like YA books that don't exist anymore. That is weird. That's food for thought for another discussion. But maybe the thing is that we have to grow with those fandoms alongside, still keeping our identity, still maintaining our ability to decide how much we want to be involved, and at the same time, what kind of takes do we want to have in those fandoms, and how much do we feel the need to be active and proactive, and how much do we want to be welcoming to new members too. Yes, I knew it was a difficult topic. And to be fair, books are changing. The industry is changing. There is this urge to publish more and faster. And the quality of many books, it's dipping down because of that. And many fandoms, they live around products that are very different from what they were just maybe 5 or 10 years ago. It looks like a new book, a new sensation drops, and the fandom sparks and ignites itself. It wills itself into existence from the get-go in a couple of hours. And now thousands of people are discussing about something and are very quickly and very strongly establishing rules about the way you have to interact with those books. And if you dare to have different opinions, they will absolutely chastise you. And at the same time, will push you to adopt a kind of a lifestyle. You have to do a specific kind of post. You have to discuss about those specific books, and you have to embrace the common opinion about those characters. And don't get me wrong, and I want to be very clear about this. There's a reason why those common opinions are common opinions. It means that the books are written in a way to drive the readers to have a similar experience. As much as they can be different because we are all different people, there are themes and characters and aesthetics and dialogues and sentences that will resonate the same way with the vast majority of the readers of a series, and that's all good. And that's what makes a shared experience so fascinating, because we want to see people having a similar experience, and we want to share that feelings of being warm and fuzzy because we read that incredible plot twist, because we love that character so much, because we dreamed to live in the same in that same exciting world that we are experiencing in a book. But at the same time, it is difficult to have an opinion that is slightly different, that can be slightly critical or very much critical of that book, of that character, of that facet of the lore and the world. Sometimes the influence of the context of the fandom can be overwhelming. It can be exhausting. Paradoxically, it can be so strong, it can come at you so strong that you can feel the need to step back and to return to that lonely experience of being by yourself in a corner of your house with all the surrounding material to make your experience perfect, with pillows and chocolate and the perfect light, because the noise of the community is so strong. Maybe the most critical point here is that we have to allow fandom to extend our experience. we cannot let them replace the experience of reading. At the end of the day, I still think that it all comes down to balance. How much time, effort, energy we want to put into being part of that community. Because as I told you, yeah, we are loners. We love the time we spend with the characters in that world, experience that incredible story, but we also want to be part of a community sharing that kind of love. But if you feel that the experience is not 100% positive, that the vast majority of the posts and discussions and interaction that you have are not positive because those fandoms are maybe a little bit more gatekeepy, and at the same time you cannot find the right people that will help you create a micro community in the macro community of itself, and if you feel that you feel drained, that the time spent in this kind of community, it is toxic, I don't think there's another word to describe it, take a little bit of time off, step back, regroup, see if you can watch at that community from the outside, trying to analyze how much of that it's been a good experience for you or not, or find a new fandom. Search for new series, search for new books, broaden the scope of what you're going to read. I know that it is difficult to be part of a smaller fandom maybe, because the bigger the series, the bigger the fandom. The older it is, the deeper it will be the discussion, and that's for sure something fascinating. There's so much to love and so much to experience when a book series is long and it has sold a ton of copies and thousands of people, so millions of people love it so much. But the bigger it is, the higher it will be the risk to have not properly just only beautiful interactions, and the harder it will be to have a 100% positive experience. In the end, we are just readers. We may be more or less of a loner, we may be more or less of an introvert, but what we really want is to find someone else who experience those books, those characters, those worlds the same way we did. And we want to talk about that, and we want to gush about that, or we want to harshly criticize those stories because they were painful and because maybe our favorite character died in a horrible way. Yes, we need that, but we need to take care of ourselves. If being part of a fandom is affecting your mental health, step back, take care of yourself, take care of yourself. This is all I've got for you today. It was a different video, right? I hope you enjoyed it. I'm usually here to review and preview books, especially epic fantasy and space opera books, but if you liked this kind of discussion and if there are specific topics that you want me to discuss, let me know. Sound off your comments and your opinions in the comment section down below. If you want to support the channel, remember that you can check out my own epic fantasy book, The Crimson Fire. It is already available in paperback, in hardcover, and the audiobook is in the early stages of pre-production. The second book is in pre-order right now. It is called The SUNRISE DAGGER. Thank you for being here. If you want to see more videos by me, you have more videos by me right here, right now. Thank you again for staying with me until the end of this video. I'll see you in the next one.